Okay, I'm going to run you through the Industrial Relations Folio task. This task requires that you go into your workplace and examine and then talk about how the work health safety, or the OC health and safety as it was known, is conducted within your workplace, and be a critic, if you like, of it. The very first step is to ensure that you have, or you develop, a checklist. I'm more than happy for you to get that checklist from your workplace. If you ask, they may well have one ready-made for you. You may find one on the web, and here are a couple of sites that you might use, but there are plenty more. You may even know someone who has a checklist that you can adapt. Most checklists will need to be specific to your workplace, so make sure that you do make some alterations if needed. I'm going to show you a few examples. Here's an example of a checklist that a student has put together with the help of, if not from, McDonald's. You'll notice things like car park and drive-through, playground, dining areas, cafe, etc. They've chosen to have like a subheading such as surfaces, and then they've got subheadings over here such as no tripping hazards and potholes, etc. They've got a scoring system. That's not compulsory, you don't have to have that. Perhaps it will help them when they went to write their report. The comments, I'm sure, would be helpful. Just a reminder to not to forget to mention things like overhanging and dangerous tree, high chair straps and clips were out of order. Those sorts of things will be really useful when you go to do your report. Here's another checklist, a general checklist, and as it sounds, this could easily be used for different workplaces: health and safety systems, housekeeping, electrical, hazardous substances, evacuations, first aid, etc. Many of those subheadings I would imagine on most checklists. They've used a yes-no system as a way of remembering what they observed, and also a column for action, or comments we should say. They've included this in their report. Some of you will include it handwritten, and that's absolutely fine, as I'd imagine many of you will take this with you in your hand, or should, and so just handwritten comments are absolutely acceptable. So if we go back now and look, step one, getting the checklist, can be a little time consuming, so make sure that you start on that whilst you're working currently on another task. Otherwise you could be sitting on your hands with nothing to do. So whilst you're getting the checklist together, work on another task. Once you have it, of course, you should go ahead and conduct that inspection. It mentions using primary and secondary resources. Primary means talking to people, perhaps observing things, going up to the boss and asking questions. Secondary could be something that's already been written, such as a policy that you can refer to. Taking observations, making observations and taking photographs will really help you when you go to do your report, but if it is not allowed or ill-advised, please don't get yourself into trouble. I'd also remind you that the conducted inspection should be happening outside of your normal work hours, otherwise there could be trouble for you in a lunch break or the likes. For some of you it could be just observations you make each time you're working, but we don't want you to in any way make your bosses angry with you for using up work time. So I've got my checklist. I've now conducted the inspection and made some notes. The final step is, using that information, you prepare a report. That report will critically analyse what you found. Now, some of the things that should be there are a summary of, to some degree, of what you've noticed, the strengths and weaknesses, or the positives and negatives you've observed. But definitely, and you must not forget, there has to be reflection and evaluation on your own personal work health safety practices. On Moodle, you will find 5 questions that will help you to basically put that section together. So please refer to that when you finish this report and do your reflection. Lastly, I of course would like to see a brief conclusion. Let's have a look at some reports. This student has chosen to use subheadings, which I'm really a fan of, such as OC health and safety posters, staff, customers, etc. And under each of those subheadings, this student has reported what they believe to be the good and the bad of each section: first aid, fire and emergency. What you will notice, of course, is the absence of photographs. This student did feel that he would be compromised if he tried to take photos. He worked at Oporto, so he decided it was better not to. You'll notice that there are things like cutting, stabbing and puncturing, because in his workplace there is cutting and opening of boxes involved. So don't think that all these subheadings are necessarily going to be the same as yours. It will depend where you work. You'll notice near the end there's a general subheading. There's no conclusion, but worst of all, there's no reflection and evaluation. So please make sure you cover that or you will lose marks. Here are a couple of other excellent reports. You'll notice a front cover, which I like on all of the tasks that you do. Some students will incorporate photographs, but at least I know the name of the student, which I've deleted, the name of the task, and perhaps our school name as well. This student has included sections of their checklist, as you can see, with a summary in pink and the occasional photograph. But this is not the final report. This is part of it. This student received a very high grade because, of course, that alone, although it would probably constitute a pass, is not going to get you a great mark. The report is where you get the chance to really go a bit deeper in your analysis and show your knowledge and understanding. So this student did a summary. They divided theirs quite differently into strengths and weaknesses. That is, rather than divide up into sections such as health and safety and discuss the good and the bad, they've actually chosen the things they felt were the most or the best areas that the workplace covered and those that were the weakest. Finally, the student, of course, did put in their personal reflection. Generally, it would be a couple of paragraphs or around 300-400 words, and then a brief conclusion at the end. So a very good report, which of course includes the checklist. Another example here, you'll notice front cover, excellent. An introduction. The introduction is useful to tell us where did you do your inspection, what kind of place do you work in, and maybe some background info we need to know. Again, subheadings. And you will notice that the student was able to take photographs, which is always very helpful if you can. Subheadings continue on discussing what worked well and what didn't, and you will notice right near the end we get the reflection where the student evaluates themselves and then a conclusion. An excellent example. The final report example I want to show you is a student that worked at a bakery. You'll notice there are subheadings again, such as slips, trips and falls, with sub-subheadings in each. They've used comments such as yes, no and a few words, which hopefully helped them to write their report. Rather a long checklist, very comprehensive. Things like working with money, you may not believe it, but it's your safety can be compromised when working with money. So this student included things like, is banking done by more than one person and or at different times of the day, so that they would not be in danger of being robbed on the way to the bank. So a very comprehensive checklist. Finally, this student has, after their introduction, divided up into each section and explained what worked well and what didn't, often ending with overall this section and summarising it. Photographs, which she was able to take, and they have captions, which I love a lot because it really helps us to understand what that picture is demonstrating. Again, a really supreme effort here of an A+. Finally, ending off with reflection and evaluation and a brief conclusion where they've included a list of recommendations that they made. That is what I would consider probably one of the best I've ever seen, a really excellent example of the industrial relations task. So to end this instruction about the industrial relations task, remember that it can be in a written form when you do your report, or it could be an oral or even a multimodal form if you choose, using graphics or photos if you can. You can use primary or secondary sources. The internet might be one if it means finding your checklist on it, and in that case should be included in a bibliography. There is no word limit, so you write until you've covered the things you want to. Remembering that the criteria we're assessing here is knowledge and understanding is one. We want to know that you understand the language and the process of being safe in the workplace. We certainly want you to analyse critically the place that you work in, and also finally and most importantly that some people do miss out, we do want you to reflect on your learning experience and your own work health safety standards. Good luck with this task. You should find that you'll learn a lot and you should be able to show us your understanding of work health safety in the workplace.